This video is sponsored by Noble Gold. CNN reported $600 million of stock has been sold each day in August. This only happened previously before the 2008 crash. Insider selling has topped $10 billion for 5 months straight. Meanwhile, gold is rocketing and demand is at a 3-year high according to the World Gold Council. You can hit the link below and someone will contact you and you will get the free gold and silver investment guide that's been downloaded over 50,000 times. Recently we saw the release of a movie called Joker, and this movie really struck a nerve with people all around the world. I did a video recently on the Joker called Joker and the Rise of the Nihilists. I believe that's one of the reasons this film is so powerful, because I believe we're seeing a real rise of a dark spirit in our world right now. For years I've been calling it the sheep or the goats, the wheat or the tares. That people are falling into one of two categories, whether they realize it or not. Some people are drawing closer to God in these times, some people are being more godly, while others are choosing a much darker path. I recently watched the movie for a second time and I noticed a few things I thought were very interesting and I wanted to share them with you. There's a very common theme we're seeing time and time again in all forms of entertainment, and it's been manifesting over the last few years. Much of our entertainment these days is literally teaching us sympathy for the devil. What used to be classified as a hero many years ago is certainly not the same thing today, because many of the heroes that were given in modern entertainment are classical psychopaths. There's a sequence in this film that truly personifies that battle within us all, between our dark side and our light side. In the beginning of the film, we see Arthur Fleck, who eventually turns into Joker, and he's walking up this long set of steps. And on the right side of the screen, later on in the film, we see Arthur, now as Joker, coming down the steps, celebrating, dancing. Both subliminally and subconsciously, this shows us that concept of the sheep or the goat, the wheat or the tare. Which side of ourselves are we embracing? In this film, in the beginning, Arthur Fleck more or less portrays the sheep. He's somewhat innocent, he's somewhat naive, he tries to be kind, and he tries to do the right thing, but the world just keeps beating him down. So throughout the film, we slowly see him embracing his dark side, his evil side, his alter ego, the Joker. It's also interesting to note that once he's made this final transformation into his dark self, his alter ego Joker, we also find the all-seeing eye or the one-eye symbolism. Which makes perfect sense. He has now sold himself out completely to this beast system. He has now completely sold himself out, his soul out, to the darker half. There's also a certain number sequence that's been coded into the film. What it means exactly, I'm not sure, but the numbers are 1111. And I caught this sequence of numbers several different times throughout the film. "1111. So what does it mean? Perhaps it's a reference to the 111 or 1111 phenomenon that many people around the world experience. If you didn't already know, I'm one of those people. Back in 2012, I made a video titled, I see 111 everywhere, what does it mean? Ever since 2012, I've been seeing 111 everywhere. Something else I wondered is, could this be a date? Perhaps November 11th. Most of you that are watching my videos are most likely well informed on subjects like this. But if you didn't know, there's a series of movies and television shows that played out several years before the September event that actually seemed to kind of predict it. This is what we call predictive programming and social engineering. I even feel there's a spiritual component to all of this as well, lesser magic, involving the public in the spell and the ritual without them fully understanding. But let me make it clear here, I'm certainly not predicting anything. I've never been someone who does that. I don't like to date set or anything like that. But for those of us with an understanding of the occult and the way that these kind of societies work, this is something for us to watch for. So there's another sequence that takes place in this film I found very interesting. I find it interesting because it's a certain type of sequence that we see play out in tons of movies and television shows. There's a sequence in the film where Arthur Fleck truly embraces his dark side. This is a pivotal moment where the change from good Arthur to Joker begins. He's in his clown costume and he's riding on the subway. There's 3 Wall Street guys on the subway with him, and they seem to be picking on a lady who's sitting all by herself. It doesn't take long for them to turn their attention to Arthur. Long story short, Arthur winds up taking all 3 of these guys out with a weapon. So right after this crime, he's running through the streets crazy, and he eventually finds himself in a public restroom. So this right here is one of the key sequences of the film that I wanted to talk about, because there's literally a ritual that takes place before our very eyes on screen, and this is something that we've seen many times before from our entertainment. At this point, a cinematic ritual is about to begin. As the Joker slowly starts to catch his breath and relax, the camera pans down to reveal a Masonic floor pattern. It's at this point that he slowly starts stepping across the floor, and you realize he's dancing. He's celebrating the ritual. He's also transforming into Joker, or his darker half. We've seen these sequences play out for many years without even realizing what we were watching, but this is a ritual on the Masonic floor. So in this film, Joker, truly one of the biggest movies in the world right now, we see this very common Freemasonic ritual taking place on screen. I'm going to show you several examples of how we see this same concept play out in our entertainment, and it's been this way again for many years. As I'm showing you some of these examples, you may think of some yourself that you've seen and maybe didn't realize until now. But this is another example of predictive programming and social engineering. We're being imprinted with this ritual, and this has been happening for a very long time. Here's a sequence from the movie Terminator 2. During this sequence, we're in a police station, and as you can see, the Masonic floor behind the police officer. The evil Terminator in this film is basically made out of shape-shifting metal. Behind the police officer, we see this evil shapeshifter manifesting on a Masonic floor. They also do a close-up here of the cup, which happens to be the red, black, and white. Once again, the blood on the Masonic floor, the sacrifice. And then the sacrifice. This is a screenshot from the end of the movie You're Next. It's a horror film that just came out a few years ago. As you can see, there's all kinds of carnage taking place here. The sequence that takes place in the kitchen was crazy, and it was hard to get a decent shot of the floor, but here's one right here. As I said, as I was watching this movie and I saw this whole sequence play out, I was just rolling my eyes. I'm like, man, I see this all the time. Some kind of crazy violence or blood or death or sacrifice taking place on the Masonic tiles. Here's a sequence from a new movie called Trick. Once again, we see the sacrifice on the Masonic floor. Here's a sequence from the 2007 film Eastern Promises, and once again we have the sacrifice on the Masonic floor. We even have the sacrifice on the Masonic floor in one of the most popular films ever, and that's The Godfather. This is a sequence called The Death of Luca Brasi. So as they're killing Luca in his seat, they're lowering his body onto the Masonic floor. Once again, we have the sacrifice in the lodge, sacrifice on the floor. This right here is a really good example of this concept of the sacrifice on the black and white tiles, or Blood on the Dance Floor from Michael Jackson. This also ties back in to that September event, Predictive Programming. Many people believe that the cover of this album was predictive programming for that particular event. So obviously somebody did some photoshopping on this image. But many people have claimed throughout the years, even before the event took place, that this was a perfect example of that kind of predictive programming. It makes it more interesting when we scroll down, and once again we see that concept, the red, black, and white, blood on the dance floor, or a sacrifice in the lodge. Here's a sequence from the television series Supernatural. Once again, we find the same concept at play here. This is when one of the main characters from the TV show is meeting death. Now this right here is from a music video, just something else I wanted to add in, and it's something that I had remembered from a band called Florence and the Machine. The song's called No Light, No Light. There's a lot going on in this video. I've shown you guys a lot of examples throughout the years of public rituals. In many of our biggest awards shows and halftime shows, we see a lot of these themes play out. And the same thing applies to this particular video here, where ultimately this lead singer is playing the devil. She's eventually going to fall from a tall building and crash into the top of a church. So while she's singing and she's standing on top of these tall buildings, there's an actual ritual taking place on the Masonic tile floor. This is a screenshot from the movie 28 Days Later. It's not always a violent sacrifice that's taking place on the Masonic tiles. Sometimes it's more sexual in nature. And that's what took place here in this movie 28 Days Later. Near the end of the film, a small group of people are more or less captured by some military survivors. And these military men eventually try taking advantage of these two young girls here. In this sequence, the two girls are on the Masonic tiles in front of a mirror. The mirror on the tiles represents a portal, other dimensions. But during this sequence, they're given two red dresses and told to put them on. The military men are basically preparing these women for sex. And on a side note, this is sex that neither one of the women actually want. So we have a sexual ritual playing out on the Masonic tiles. Here's another example, and I thought this one was really crazy. It's from a singer named Tom Jones. He's been around for many, many years. And in this video, he's singing with a lady named Circe Matthews. And the song is called Baby It's Cold Outside. This is actually supposed to be a Christmas song. But in this video, Tom Jones is playing the devil himself. And gee, for whatever reason, there's a Masonic tile floor in hell. He also has the singer, the young lady, in a cage. I've shown you guys throughout the years that the bird cage or the cage oftentimes symbolizes mind control, MK Ultra. And we also see another concept taking place here, and again, that's the good girl gone bad, or back to the sheep or the goats, or the wheat or the tares, or which side of us are we clinging to, the good godly side or our darker self. So the young lady starts off in a white dress in the cage. But by the end of the video, she's completely in black now, and a lot sexier. She's in a black leather sexy outfit, right? But what does this symbolize? Again, this symbolizes the good girl gone bad, or making that choice, choosing the darkness, choosing the dark side. You can look at pretty much any Disney female pop star, trace her career, and you'll see this exact same thing playing out. They always start off very sweet, very innocent, pushed on the public, and your children love them. But after a few albums, they make the new choice, or that choice is made for them, and they choose the dark side. So those are just some of the examples I wanted to show you, but there's plenty more out there that exist. Now that I've shown you this, and now that you realize that it's an actual thing, I assure you that you'll start seeing more and more of this in all kinds of entertainment. It's been there all along, but most of us have our eyes closed to these types of things. I've always said I believe this is much more spiritual in nature. At the end of the film, we find the transformation complete. Arthur is no longer Arthur. Arthur is now Joker, his evil alter ego. This sequence takes place near the very end of the film. We see him looking amidst all the chaos out in the streets that he's created. And with his fingers, he paints this bloody smile on his face. The secrets that have been held in shadows for many years is finally coming out. And I believe that's coming out through the Holy Spirit, because we're living at a time where everything is being revealed. And I do believe it's a time to make a choice. It's a decision time. So I'll leave you with that for now, folks. Thanks once again, as always, for watching the video. Take care of yourselves out there, alright? And I'll talk to you a little later.